Welcome to the latest episode of the FMI Podcast. My name is Marlana Lancaster, a financial advisor here with Financial Management. Alongside me is founder and CEO, David Elmore. Hey, David.
Good morning.
How are you today?
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
Here to talk about retirement, which is like what most people are striving for.
That's the aspiration.
Right.
What does retirement mean to you?
One of the things that I wanted to talk about, but maybe later on, but since you queued it up that way, we'll do it. One of the things that we talk about with clients very adamantly is to have a plan in retirement, to have social, something to replace your job. Years ago, Social Security started paying out at 65 years old, and most people died by 67. And so I was part of the solvency of Social Security, but people are living longer. But the point there is that if you don't have something to get out of bed for every day, you're not going to. People are, they need to have a purpose, and without purpose, a man perishes. A little bit of scripture there, but particularly men, so oftentimes men have their identity wrapped up in their profession. And if all of a sudden day two, that's gone, then now what? And so it's really important to have a plan in place to replace your job, whether it's a hobby, whether it's traveling. One of my passions is some type of ministry. There's a book that we advocate a lot by Bob Buford. It's called Halftime, and the concept there is you spent half of your life building your career, building your wealth, building your retirement savings, and now you're at a point where you're still prime in life, and all the talents that God has given you, that He has trained you up for such a time as this, used for ministry or kingdom work, whether it's working in your church, working in a nonprofit organization locally or nationally or internationally. But it's very important to replace that work time with something fulfilling in retirement.
I love that. So the purpose of retirement is not to stop working, but to do something else. And again, wake up with purpose.
Yes.
So we're in this season. There's baby boomers. There's all these baby boomers that came about after World War II. I think the statistics are 1946, maybe to 1966. 77 million of you were born. And so there's the statistic that's been out there for about a decade. 10,000 baby boomers a day are retiring, and they will through the year 2030. So there's this huge flux of people trying to figure out life. And so you spend a lot of your life working, saving in retirement plans, planning for retirement. And so today the goal is to talk about how to not blow that up and to have a good retirement. Sound good?
Sounds good.
So I guess the first question for you, I'll just give you an example. I'm 65 years old. I'm getting ready to retire, and I've got a 401k. What do I do with it?
So there's lots of options there. Some people, I just talked to a client yesterday, and she just turned 65, and she wants to cash in her 401k. I mean, this is very timely. It's interesting that you asked the question that way. And I pleaded and begged, don't do that. You're going to throw hundreds of thousands of dollars on your tax return in one single year. You're going to blow up your tax return. All your Social Security benefits are going to be taxable. You're going to get IRMA, which is a whole nother discussion, and you're going to lose the compounding effect of that 401k. And I'm not sure if I was able to dissuade her or not, but it's catastrophic to cash out a 401k almost at any time, much less right at retirement. You're going to lose 25, 35, as much as 50% to taxes if you just cash that in.
So as an alternative, what are some suggestions?
So you keep the 401k at your former employer, or you can roll it over to an IRA. IRA is an individual retirement account, and that can be created anywhere, any financial institution such as a bank, or clearly with us financial advisors, we would open up an IRA. We would do a trustee-to-trustee direct rollover, which makes that not taxable, and those investment assets would remain invested and earning money, growing, and then the idea is that you just simply create an income stream from that to live on as opposed to taking lump sum distributions.
That sounds smart. We should all do that. So to restate that, let me say I retired. I have a 401k with $100,000 in it. I can roll that 401k to a traditional IRA anywhere, and when it gets to that new IRA, the value is still 100,000.
Still 100,000.
Okay, cool. So not taxable. But if I liquidate it from my prior 401k custodian, they're going to withhold a minimum of 20% tax, but that might not be enough to cover my taxes due, right?
Depending on your other income, that very likely will fall short of what your total tax liability is. So you would walk away with probably 70,000, maybe 60,000,
Okay.
and 100 versus 60. Now you have a growing capacity of 60,000 versus 100,000.
Okay. Okay, that's part one. So I'm retired. I have an IRA. I took your advice. I have a traditional IRA now. Now what? Can I take out as much as I want when I want? Can I go buy a beach house? What can I do with that?
Well, it's America. You can do anything you want.
Perfect.
But the prudent thing to do would be to create an income stream. So if we invest assets for clients, we have an average rate of return. And then, so the question becomes, how much money can I take? How much income stream can I create without eating up all my seed corn, so to speak, or eating into principal? And the industry average is 3.5% to 4%. We have we feel like we're better investment advisors for all kinds of things, and so we have long had a 5% distribution rate for many clients for decades, and still sustaining that. And they have more money they did when they retired. And so summing that up, if you take your 401k, roll it to an IRA, $100,000, we can create an income stream of about 5% or $5,000 a year, and that would help supplement other retirement income such as Social Security or a pension.
I like it. Okay. So there's a lot about taxes. We've talked about taxes before, and taxes are a really important part of retirement planning and pulling money and that proper withdrawal strategy. So I guess two things. One, is Social Security taxable?
Been a lot of discussion about that with the OBBA, and it is still taxable. Congress could not get the no tax on Social Security provision passed, so there was a compromise. There's a $6,000 deduction per taxpayer over age 65 unless you get phased out. But no, Social Security is still taxable, or it's not. So it's not taxable, or it is taxable up to 80% depending on other income on the tax return. And so that's another careful consideration when you're in retirement, to look at your whole situation at any given time to know whether a lump sum distribution, for instance, is going to cost you 5%, 10%. Sometimes it can cost you 50% because it all of a sudden made 100 or 80% of your Social Security benefits taxable. And so now not only are you paying tax on the distribution, but you're paying tax on 80% of your Social Security benefits. So it's really, really tricky, and a plan is necessary throughout retirement.
So what would be an alternative to that? Are there other considerations or other things to pull from to supplement my retirement needs?
Yeah, when we like to help people through life. We like to have a relationship with people early in life and then build this portfolio, build their life together. So ideally, once somebody gets to retirement, they have a 401k, an IRA, Roth IRA, or a non-IRA or a non-qualified account. And so if we have all of those different buckets of money, it makes it there's a lot more opportunity to provide an income stream to the retiree without blowing up their tax return. In other words, we may pull from Roth money, we may pull from non-qualified money, we may pull from IRA money, but it's very strategic and it changes throughout a person's life. Like if they're under 67, full retirement age, we may take out money from a Roth IRA or a non-qualified IRA, not to blow up their tax return. Once they reach Medicare age, it changes, and then the next threshold is 73 when required minimum distributions kick in. So it's very important to have all three buckets of money, and it's very important to strategize how your distributions are structured.
I appreciate that. Just real quick, I've heard this topic of and with taxes again, bracket creep. Can you tell the audience a little bit about what bracket creep is, and is that
So
important?
the U.S. tax code it's a progressive tax rate. It's not regressive. So your next dollar earned is what your marginal tax rate is. So if you're in the 15% tax bracket, but your income suddenly increased and now you're in a 22% tax bracket, your first dollar was still taxed at 0, 10, 15, and then your next dollar is taxed at 22%. But that bracket creep can really affect you, and it affects your capital gains as well. So you really want to try to avoid having large jumps of income on a tax return. I was meeting with a client yesterday who's getting ready to sell a piece of property for $400,000, and so we talked about spreading that out over 10 years or just taking the hit. And the conclusion between he and I, given his situation, it's going to be better just to take the whole hit in 1 year, blow up one tax return instead of blowing up 10, for all kinds of reasons. But each situation is different and really needs to have a good look at it.
So it's important to seek advice on some of these and strategize properly. Okay, I appreciate that. Okay, shifting gears a little bit. When we retire, there's two specific things I want to talk about. One is estate planning. So once you retire, it's a season, it's a transition of life. Is it important to look at your will, your power of attorney, your beneficiaries? Is that a good time?
It's always a good time to revisit your estate plan, including beneficiaries. Again, I met with a client a week or two ago, uh, and we were looking at her 401k plan. And she had her ex-husband, like 12 years ago,
Mm.
ex-husband, still listed as the beneficiary. And she didn't even know it. I just happened to glance at it and saw it and said, we need to change this. So it's always good to uh, go and look at your beneficiaries, your successor beneficiaries, to be sure that they are accurate. Also, life changes. And so if you haven't updated your will, your power of attorney, your medical directive in a number of years, you should revisit that. Life changes, laws change, and so it's good to keep track, keep up to date with those things. Also, your situation oftentimes becomes more complex
Mhm.
as you get into retirement, particularly with blended families. And in those cases, it's probably best if you have a trust document. But we be happy to flesh out those. We can't write legal documents, but we can coach you, and we have some attorneys that we work with.
That's great. I appreciate that. Okay, there's another not new phenomenon, but something that's happened in the last 5 to 10 years. You have grandchildren.
Hmm.
There's a lot of your peers that have grandchildren. How many grandparents do you see raising their grandchildren these days?
It is, yeah, I think you're right. I think it is a new phenomenon. I don't know, but it seems epidemic. But children and grandchildren can wreck your retirement. Everybody loves their children and grandchildren and wants what's best for them, and they want to help them out, help them buy a new home, help them buy a car. Um, but and those are fine things to do, but not to the detriment of your own retirement. People fail to realize the power of an asset, large buckets of cash.
Mhm.
Once you give those away, you lose your earning power. So if you have $1 million, that seems like an inexhaustible, is that the right word? Bucket of money. But in fact, it could go away pretty quick. $1 million using my 5% rule will give you $50,000 a year of income. But if you through a couple of years, help children out, and now all of a sudden you're down to $500,000. Now your income for life is $25,000 a year, and it's devastating. So you earned your way in life. why would you deprive your children of earning their way through life?
That's pretty powerful.
Yes.
Are you willing to be the bad guy and you're the tough love giver for the grandchild or the child? You can be that for the clients.
Yes, we do
Blame
that.
blame the advisor.
Yes, blame the advisors. Blame me.
I love that. Okay. Let's see one other question that I run into a decent amount. So I want to retire and I want to live much more extravagantly than I did before. I want to travel the world and buy boats and planes and trains, and that's a little extreme. It is Augusta County, but people that do want to travel, is that a good idea?
I'm going all the way back to the beginning part of life. I'm a big proponent of budgeting. And so, figure out what your post-retirement income is, your Social Security, if you have a pension, most people don't anymore, or the pension that we create for you through your savings. And then that's your nut. That's what you have to eat on, and that's what you need to live in. So if your income and between Social Security and savings from distribution is $100,000 a year, you can't spend $120,000 a year, nor could you when you were 30. So nothing has changed. You have to live within your means. So it can get away from you, and there's a dichotomy. You and I both see both sides of this. We have some people that are like, no, I don't. I don't want to leave 10 mile radius from my house ever. I just
Mhm.
enjoy gardening, and this is great. And other people want to take lavish cruises and big trips to Europe and things like that. Either are fine. Just don't live outside your means.
That's a great idea. I appreciate that. So there's another topic that's really important during financial planning. So again, you've worked your whole life to get to the stage of retirement. You've got this sum of money. What if I get scared? What if somebody on Facebook or some news topic creates fear in me? What should I do? Should I pull it all out, put my arms around it, and put it in the bank and buy a CD?
It's a great point, and the arms around it, the way I always like to say it, so you've worked all your life, you're used to your job and or your spouse's job, and you're able to pump thousands of dollars a year into your checking account. And then you retire, and then all of a sudden that stops, and then this psychological fear embraces you, and you just want to circle the wagons so I can protect everything that I have
Mhm.
because all I have is all I'll ever have, and that's real, but it's actually going against you because if you just have the money in the bank, you're by default losing money to inflation. The only way that you can sustain that bucket of money and get ahead is investing in assets that are contrary to inflation. And the only one, it's not gold. You knew that I was going to say it, but it's not. It's stocks. So having a good stock bond portfolio is still very, very important to be able to grow that. So if you have $1 million and you do nothing, you just bury it in the backyard. In 20 years, that's worth $500,000 due to inflation. And so you're just losing money by protecting money. But instead, if you took that $1 million and invested it in a well-balanced, actively managed portfolio, that's going to continue to grow at some average rate. The S&P 500's average over 10%. And so something like that. So not only can you take income from that, but it'll also grow.
There's a parable of the talent somewhere along the way that might represent that. But that is correct. So purchasing power, and certainly we just went through that with COVID as a good example. Inflation skyrocketed 9-10%. And if your money was invested, you would have maintained that purchasing power. Not that you want to spend $8 a carton for eggs, but you could if you had to.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what have we missed? That's a lot about retirement. What else do you want to share with the audience? Anything top of mind?
I think all of this kind of comes back to the necessity of having a financial plan. Working with a professional financial planner who can assess all of your assets, all of your desires, and put that into a good cohesive plan and be able to walk that out throughout life. People are living much longer. I joke with clients. I say, "When did you tell me you were going to die?" And they just kind of fumble, well, I didn't, I don't know. And so if you're 60 years old and you're going to live to be 70, then that's 10 years and we can just spend down to that. But the reality is, if you're 65 now, you're going to live to be 92. If you're a man, you're going to live to be 94. If you're a female, statistically, that's true. And that's a long time. And so it's very important that you be very diligent and specific and plan out those 30 years of retirement. And it can be great. It can absolutely be great. I met with a client just last week who's my age, and they've already retired. And I said, "How's retirement?" And she looked like Chester Cheetah, however that word, cat. And she said, "Oh, it is so great. You got to try it." So I'm happy for them that they're enjoying retirement because that's what it's all about.
That's perfect. Yeah. So as an advisor, it's one of the things we like to do is to go through life with people. We coach people. We give people advice, life advice, behavioral and emotional advice, as well as financial advice, and get them through life and take care of their heirs in the future. It's a great honor to do those things. Thank you for joining us today. If you ever have any questions about retirement, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, have a great day.
The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. There is no assurance that the techniques and strategies discussed are suitable for all investors or will yield positive outcomes. The purchase of certain securities may be required to affect some of the strategies. Investing involves risks, including possible loss of principal. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor. Member FINRA, SIPC.